Man, what a busy day, busy news day. It's amazing the stories that are rotating and coming through the cycle. It's exciting, and you and I get a chance to talk about it. That's what I love about radio, talk radio. Great conversation with the community. My name's Jeff. It's West Side Jeff, and for Chris Krok here on News Talk 820 WBAP. Chris filled in earlier today for Casey Bartholomew. Casey's out on vacation, you know what? Maybe he's actually with his wife, Carrie Underwood. Stalker. He always says Carrie's his wife or wife-to-be or something like that. So maybe he took some time to go over and spend some time with Carrie. But Chris filled in earlier today, and I get a chance to sit in the chair. The name is Jeff. It's West Side Jeff in for Chris. And my story's simple. I'm born and raised up in the state of Ohio. There's a connection to that with what we're going to talk about in a few minutes. Always been in the radio business and in the industry and love talk radio, and just found myself watching the news and having an opinion every time I like to analyze things. I process, I analyze, and find myself having an opinion. And I just call it common sense opinion on current events. That's what I talk about. And common sense is missing. You know that. Common sense is missing. So let's start with the big news stories. There's a lot of things juggling. By the way, the biggest story today is the start of the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. Throughout the night, we're going to dip in and out of coverage. There's talk that former President Donald Trump, who will accept the nomination on Thursday, will make an appearance tonight. When he does, we'll dip in and see what former President Trump has to say. We'll also maybe dip in and out of a few speakers along the way to see what people have to say at the RNC, because I think it's important to stay on top of that. Some other news out of the RNC. Just hours ago, Trump selected his vice presidential nominee. And when I mentioned a moment ago, I'm from the state of Ohio, born and raised. I spent many years up in Columbus, Ohio, the capital of the state. JD Vance is his nominee. He's an Ohioan. JD, I do not know JD personally, but we will talk to somebody at the bottom of the hour who does. Bob Clegg is a political consultant, national political consultant. He's been on with me several times before. He knows JD. He knows politics. He knows Ohio and Ohio politics. Bob was a delegate for the state of Ohio a couple times. We'll talk to him a little more about JD Vance and what it's all about. My immediate opinion on that is it's a great pick. I was actually thinking it was probably going to be Doug Burgum, the governor out of North Dakota. A little bit surprised it was JD, but I'm glad. And what that tells me, the immediate thought is this on JD Vance. When you say, hey, Jeff, why JD Vance and what's behind that? My immediate thought is, and I've not processed this for several hours, is just first thought. It hit me a couple things. Number one is this campaign, this presidential campaign, is a campaign that the Democrats, Joe Biden, the president Joe Biden, is obviously running again, and a lot of Democrats are nervous about that because of his age, mental acuity. Voters are really nervous, and the Democratic Party is very nervous that Joe Biden is running, and they're trying to quietly figure out a way to get him to step aside. And they're calling it age. To me, it's not age. Although in this case, age comes into play with Joe. And let me explain. When I say to me, it's not age, because I know, to me, there's not an age that you hit an age and you can't run for office. It's not about age to me. It's not a number. It's mental acuity. I know some 85-year-olds who are as on top of it as anything you can imagine, that you would not know mentally, emotionally, they're 85 years old. But I also know some 50-year-olds that have the mental acuity that Joe Biden does. So to me, it's not a number. It's not an age. It's a mental acuity. But it just so happens Joe, because of his age, let's face it, there comes a time in life where there's end of life. And as end of life approaches, mental acuity is part of that problem. And I think that's the problem with Joe. But my bigger problem with Joe is policies. It's not age is a problem, the mental acuity, but my bigger problem is the policies. Policies are all wrong. The damage he's done to our country is significant, and it's going to take many, many years to fix what he has broken. But Trump selected JD Vance. Again, I think part of the JD Vance announcement is JD is 39 years old, I think, is 40 years old. So the stark contrast between the difference of a man in his 70s and going into his 80s in the mental acuity of Joe Biden, and then a 39 or 40-year-old guy in JD Vance, it's going to make that difference look even bigger. So I think that's part of what's behind the JD Vance selection. I've had people say, well, he selected him because he's from Ohio and it carries Ohio. No, I'm born and raised in Ohio. I did talk radio up in Ohio the last couple of elections. I'm telling you, when Donald Trump said he was going to build a wall, he did. He didn't do it on the southern border. He built a wall around the state of Ohio, and it's a red wall because Ohio has gone really red. Ohio used to be a very lucrative swing state for several elections. I hate to tell you, Ohio is not a swing state anymore. The swing states this election, as of right this second, are going to be Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, the Rust Belt. And I think JD Vance helps in the Rust Belt area a little bit also because of his story, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too. Also news today, a federal judge announced that she's dismissing the classified documents prosecution against Donald Trump. Earlier today, the judge said, U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon in Florida said officials like Jack Smith typically must be confirmed by Senate unless Congress has given such appointment powers to the executive branch alone. No federal law gave Attorney General Merrick Garland that authority, she wrote in a 93-page ruling. We'll talk about that throughout the evening also. Bob Clegg will address that coming up at the bottom of the hour too. And then the other thing, and we'll get into this in the next segment after I hit a break in about 2 or 3 minutes, is you've heard the term less is more. You know what? We are 48 hours removed from the assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump. And we know as little about the shooter now as we did then. We really don't know a whole lot more. We've had some new information come out in the last couple hours. I'm going to tell you what has come out just in the last couple hours as it relates to this. And we'll talk about that too. Again, my name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. Working with my producer tonight is Thomas. Thomas, thank you for being there. So when you want to call in and be on the show and voice your opinion, that's what talk radio is about. It's about your opinion, my opinion. The beautiful thing about this country is freedom of speech, and we get to give our opinions. If you'd like to voice your opinion, 800-288-9227. That's 800-288 WBAP. You'll talk to Thomas, tell him what you want to talk about, and he'll let me know, and we'll talk on the air. And my news partner is Sean Allen. I got Sean Allen in the newsroom covering all these stories and keeping me up to speed on what's coming up in the news, and I'll tip you off on that also. So we got a team here for you, teamwork of combination of analysis and opinion, as well as Sean in the newsroom and good old-fashioned common sense. That's what I like to impart on people. If you want to weigh in socially, I'm on social media at Westside Jeff. That's on X, formerly known as Twitter, also Facebook. Again, at Westside Jeff. Got to hit a break on the other side of this in about 3.5 minutes. We'll talk a little more about the latest news in the last couple hours about the shooter of Thomas Crooks, the guy who tried to assassinate Donald Trump on Saturday night, 48 hours ago, or a little more than 48 hours ago, 50-some hours ago. We'll talk about that next. I'm Westside Jeff, sitting in for Chris Krok on News Talk 820 WBAP, and now on FM at 93.3. So some breaking news here in the last hour or so. Story hit that I saw this across, this is the source's Wall Street Journal, that Elon Musk has said he is committing around $45 million a month to a new pro-Trump super PAC. Other backers of America PAC include some technology guys, but Musk is saying he's putting up $45 million a month to a new pro-Trump super PAC. You know what's interesting about that story? Again, Westside Jeff is the name, sitting in for Chris Krok. It's all about opinion. What's interesting about that is Elon Musk, before he bought Twitter, now X, was perceived as a Democrat, and he probably was. I have to go back and look at his voting records and all that stuff. He was a lefty. But when he bought Twitter or X and truly instituted freedom of speech, all the lefties kicked on him, punted on him, turned on him, and now he is the Antichrist, almost as bad as Hitler, is what they'll tell you, because he is a threat to democracy. Think about that for a minute. A man who buys Twitter and cleans it up and opens it up as a freedom of speech element, protecting the First Amendment right, is a threat to democracy. Go figure. Name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. We'll talk about that a little bit later, too. But updating on, by the way, bottom of the hour, I'm going to talk to Bob Clegg. He's a political consultant about JD Vance, Trump's VP pick, as well as the other news about a federal judge dismissing classified documents prosecuting Donald Trump. I want to talk real quick about what happened Saturday night. That changed the trajectory of not only a political campaign, but life. There are two entire generations of people that never, ever, ever lived through an attempted assassination of a president or former president. The last one prior to this was 1981. I was in college. So there are two generations of people, pretty much people under the age of 45 or 50, and that have never experienced this. Don't know what it's like. Don't know what it's about. Let me tell you, it sucks. It sucks. I don't care if the candidate that was attempted to be assassinated is Trump or Biden. It's unacceptable. You hear all the talk about political violence. There's no room for that. And I don't know the solution to that. Both parties are guilty at rhetoric. The end of the day, we have a guy with a lot of loose screws that somehow outsmarted a 20-year-old kid, outsmarted the Secret Service. And you know what? My attitude is this: let's give our federal government, Congress, and those folks time to investigate and let the facts come out as they may. Because all I've done is read stuff across social media of all kinds of things that people think happened and opinions. And they don't know. You know what? Let the facts come out and let's evaluate the facts as we can. Here's what we do know: that the portrait emerges today in the last couple hours of the shooter is quiet. He's quiet. He's withdrawn and has very little political footprint. The man authorities say that tried to assassinate former President Trump was a quiet student. He took advanced classes and sometimes bullied as a loner who wasn't vocal about his political views. That's according to his classmates throughout the day yesterday and earlier today. Schoolmates of Thomas Krok said that at times he dressed in camouflage or hunting attire, had few friends, interacted awkwardly at school. If someone would say something to his face, he would just kind of stare at them. He was a loner, and that's coming out. He didn't have much of a social media profile. I got kids. I got a 28-year-old and I got a 24-year-old. I don't know any kid in their 20s that doesn't have some kind of a social media profile. This guy, they're struggling to find it, according to the reports I'm seeing. Law enforcement officials struggled to quickly identify him on Saturday, finding no photo ID on him. They said the AR-15 that he used belonged to his father, and they were trying to determine whether he took that weapon without his father's knowledge. His father, the elder Crooks, assumed his son had left the house and gone to a gun range on Saturday, but became concerned when his son didn't return and he couldn't reach him. And he saw the news and put two and two together and figured, uh-oh. So he called the police after hearing the news of the shooting, and that's when they put two and two together. So that's how he was identified. Imagine as a parent to know that your son is troubled. You have a troubled child. I've experienced that. I've seen it, and they're in need of help. And finding out that your child went to an event and is the one that got on a roof and tried to assassinate a former president. I pray for that man that he can actually live his life and be okay. That's very, very sad. Investigators found rudimentary explosive devices in this guy's car, parked near the rally in Butler, PA. They found bomb-making materials at his home. It's about an hour south of Butler, down in the Pittsburgh area. They say he acted alone. Investigators still trying to determine his motive and ideology. According to Kevin Rojic, FBI special agent in charge of the FBI's Pittsburgh office, they say that part of the challenge officials have is that they really can't find anything on this guy. I mean, it's unusual to find someone who created that kind of a mass panic event without a lot of information. They recovered his cell phone. They sent it to Quantico to try to break into his phone and see what they can find. Crooks hadn't been on the FBI's radar as a possible threat before the shooting, and investigators found no indication of mental health issues. The Rojic, the FBI guy, said, "We continue to look at all his social media accounts and look for any potential threatening language. But as of right now, we've just not seen it. We can't find it. There's nothing there." He did have a gaming social media platform he interacted with, but he really hadn't been on it for a while. He just appeared to have little social media presence, which is unusual in itself to have someone of that age with almost no social media presence. He is registered. We know this. It came out. He's registered as a Republican in Pennsylvania. But on President Biden's inauguration day, he gave $15 to Chicago-based Progressive Turnout Project. We don't know a lot more today than we did on Saturday. I say, my opinion, let's give them time. They'll get to the bottom of it. It'll just take time. And we may not know in real time what's going on. They may not tell us what's going on. We may not have full visibility of what's going on immediately. I say give them time. Let's get to the bottom of it. Let's see where the breakdowns were. I think we'll find out in the end. There were a lot of warning signs that others could have alerted folks. They didn't. And that's my 2 cents. You got an opinion? Hit me up at Westside Jeff on social media or 800-288-9227. That's 800-288-9227. Got to hit Bob in the Hour News in just a moment. Sean Allen tells me in the newsroom he's got a couple stories he's working on, including Marjorie Taylor Greene, who criticized Biden administration at the convention tonight, and updates on the AT&T data breach, which is a significant story that people aren't talking about. I may hit on that here sometime in the next hour also. On the other side of the news, Bob Clegg joins me. We'll talk about the news of the day and the political implications for JD Vance joining Team Trump on the ticket. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, and for Chris Krok on News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3. The name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff sitting in for Chris Krok here on News Talk 820 WBAP. Boy, what a big news day it's been. A lot of stories to cover, a lot of territory to cover. If you'd like to weigh in, you can hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, or call the show. I want to bring in a guest of mine that I've talked to many times before, because there's a lot of stories I want to juggle and talk about. Today's the start of the first day of the RNC. That's going on in Milwaukee right now. Former President Donald Trump is going to be accepting the nomination on Thursday. He's expected to make an appearance sometime tonight. When he does, we'll dip in and out of coverage to see what's going on there. Earlier today, Donald Trump selected JD Vance as his running mate. I want to get into that in about 60 seconds. Also today, federal judge dismissed the classified documents prosecution case against Donald Trump. We'll talk about that. And as far as the events of Saturday night, it's amazing that we know as little today about the shooter who tried to assassinate Donald Trump as we probably did Saturday night. We really don't know much. Joining me now to talk about some of these things is Bob Clegg. I've known Bob, all my life. When I lived up in Ohio, Bob ran a big national political consulting firm. He's a political consultant on the Republican side. Bob was a delegate for the state of Ohio. I remember turning my TV over a couple of years. I remember seeing you on the floor, Bob, saying, standing right next to the I think it was Joanne Davidson standing there nominating the next president, George Bush, I think, and a few others.
Yeah.
And you've handled a lot of political races. The only race you've not had a candidate run for as president, but you were involved in Greg Abbott's campaign here in Texas when he ran for AG, right?
Yep, first time back in 2002.
So, Bob, a lot of news today we got to get to.
Yeah.
Let's start with the big news today going on at the RNC, and that is Donald Trump's expected to make an appearance sometime tonight. But he announced earlier today he's a TV guy. Let's face it. He knows how to work magic when it comes to ratings. He learned by
he's a reality TV star.
That's right. And he's I could argue he's probably the biggest reality TV star ever, especially on the heels of what happened Saturday night. Today he named JD Vance, Ohio Senator, as his vice president running mate. Your immediate thought on JD Vance? You're an Ohioan.
Yeah. Great guy. I think it was a great pick. I tried not to be too Ohio biased on that, but no, I mean, it's a great pick because as you know, Jeff, one of the big issues that has developed in this campaign is the issue of age. And J.D. Vance will be the first millennial ever to be on a national ticket. Wow. And I think that sends a pretty big statement. And it just shows the vast difference between the two tickets. I mean, J.D. Vance is about almost 20 years younger than Kamala Harris. So, I mean, even there's a big age difference.
Wow.
So, let alone with Joe Biden. So, amazing. No, I think it was an inspired choice. J.D. Vance also has a backstory that is so unique and different than most politicians. He grew up in southern Ohio.
Down near Cincinnati, right? Southwestern Ohio?
Yeah, Middletown, which had a lot of people that had come in from, Kentucky, West Virginia. So it's got that part of Ohio's got a real southern flavor to it. And he was raised by a single mom who unfortunately had a drug addiction, and then eventually was raised by his grandmother because his mother couldn't do it. Overcame all of that to join the Marines and be a Marine, went to Iraq, comes back, goes to Yale Law School, and then becomes a very, very successful businessman and a best-selling author, which his book got made into a movie. And, the guy's just got so much in his background, and it's so varied. And that is so unique when you're talking about president or vice president.
It sounds, Bob, like we're talking to Bob Clegg. He's a national political strategist. His business is up in Ohio. I've known Bob a long time. I'm Westside Jeff sitting in for Chris Krok. Bob, it sounds like almost a rags to riches story for JD Vance, who was nominated today as vice president running mate for Donald Trump. But the other thing about this, to me, Bob, is the state of Ohio connection, his fame connection, that age connection, and how much. One of the things about politics is you want to create differences. You want to show stark differences between A and B. And his background really addresses some of the talking points that Democrats typically like to use against the Republican Party. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, he comes from a very poor background. And what has happened, what Donald Trump has done over the last 10 years, is he has completely upended what the bases are for the two major parties. Because back in the day, if you remember, back in, going back 50 years, was the suburban, white suburban areas were very Republican and the urban areas were very Democrat, and the rural areas could go either way. And that's changed completely. Donald Trump has, and Ronald Reagan started the process back in the 80s with ethnic blue-collar workers, and Donald Trump just continued that on. And the kind of background that JD Vance has is the kind of background now that a lot of the people that are voting for Donald Trump, they're working class people that, they want better for themselves, and they don't want a handout from the government. And they just want government to get out of the way. And the Democrats now have the rich white suburbanites, liberal suburbanites, as their base in their party. So I think picking somebody like JD Vance just reiterates the direction that the Republican Party is going in. And I think it's a great direction. I mean, I think this is the best thing for our party. And also the inroads that he's making with African Americans, Hispanics. I mean, that's all been great.
You, Bob Clegg joining me, Westside Jeff in for Chris Krok. You mentioned it all comes back to money, and politics does. It absolutely does. Without money, you can't run for office and you can't be elected for office. Breaking news in the last hour or so, and I don't know if you've seen this yet or not. No, you probably haven't.
No, I haven't, but I've been waiting. I know what you're going to say, and I've been waiting to hear a number. a story out of the Wall Street Journal just moments ago. The headline says that Elon Musk has said he is committing around $45 million a month to a new pro-Trump super PAC. Ooh,
Elon Musk has said he plans to commit about $45 million a month to a new super political action committee backing former President Donald Trump's presidential run. That's according to people familiar. Other backers in the group include some technology folks and some others with money. Pretty interesting. What do you make of that immediately?
Well, I knew Elon Musk had done an initial, and he didn't say how much. He did an initial large contribution to a PAC, a third-party PAC. And I saw on Saturday night that he formally endorsed President Trump. So that's great. I'm not
real surprised
because he was going in that direction. And that's the other point. That's the other point here about JD Vance. Notice that became public after President Trump picked JD.
That's exactly where I was going. That came visible after the Trump pick.
Yeah, and Elon Musk and JD Vance, they're on the same page. And especially on the idea of censorship in social media.
That's important. Bob, do you have time to stick around for a moment? I want to get into federal judge dismissing a classified documents case today and some of that stuff. You got a minute to stick around for that?
Yep, sure.
That's Bob Clegg. We'll continue the conversation about JD Vance as Trump's running mate and also delve into the federal judge that is dismissing classified documents prosecution case against Trump. Ironically, that news broke today, almost 48 hours after assassination attempt. Think there's a connection? Bob will tell us in about 4 minutes. I'm Westside Jeff and for Chris Krok on News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3. Jeff is the name. Westside Jeff sitting in for Chris Krok. Chris filled in earlier for Casey. He'll be doing Casey's show tomorrow afternoon also, and I'll be sitting here in Chris's show tomorrow night. If you want to interact, if you want to comment, you can hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, or pick up the phone, dial 800-288-9227. We're talking about all the news events of the day. There's a lot of news going on, and we're talking about it with Bob Clegg. Bob is a political strategist, does a lot of Republican campaigns across the country, a lot of state campaigns, a lot of governorship type gubernatorial campaigns, some U.S. Senate campaigns, and House of Representative campaigns. Bob, so he advises politicians on how to handle things. Bob, today Donald Trump selected JD Vance from the state of Ohio. He's a U.S. Senator in the state of Ohio. The other senator there is Sherrod Brown. So Ohio is split with a Democratic senator and a Republican senator. One of
the few states, Jeff.
Yep.
One of the few states that has that. There aren't many. Used to be they were a lot more common, but nowadays there's very few states that have one from each party.
Now Vance will remain in the Senate, and unless he wins the election, right? It's kind of an insurance policy. Then if he wins, he will forfeit his Senate seat. The governor of the state of Ohio will appoint a new senator until there's to fill the term, is how that progresses. This is very real. JD Vance may be the next vice president of the United States. Grade the pick.
What does that mean for 2028 then?
That means he's the guy for 2028.
Yeah.
That's why you got to watch. You got to study up on JD Vance, his policies, his positions, his stances, because he may be president of the United States in 2028. Grade his pick, Trump's pick of JD Vance, 1 to 10. 10 being the best.
Jeff, the other thing about J.D. Vance that's really interesting is he was very anti-Trump back in 2015 and 2016. And he
said he was a never-Trumper.
Today. Yeah, he was a never-Trumper. And I heard him say it today when he was on Fox News, that he was wrong. He goes, I was wrong. He goes, I didn't think he was going to be a good president. He turned out to be a great president. And he goes, that's why I decided, to change my mind about him.
Earlier today, U.S. District Judge Eileen Cannon in Florida, who's a Trump appointee, declared that the federal judge dismissed classified documents prosecution against Trump. Your thoughts on that case?
Interesting in that it's the dismissal is based on an argument that has been put forth numerous times before. Most notably, when Robert Mueller was appointed a special counsel back in 2017, 2018, when he was investigating the bogus Russian collusion charges. And no court has ever found that the appointment process was somehow unconstitutional, but Judge Cannon did, and she had a very good opinion. It says there's a separation of powers here that needs to take place, which means any kind of special prosecutor that the administration, the executive branch, wants to have out there has to be approved by Congress before they can do their job. And the Biden administration obviously did not do that. It's also interesting that in last week's presidential immunity decision that came down, Clarence Thomas the U.S. Supreme Court. Clarence Thomas did a concurring opinion on that. And in his concurrence, he talks about his doubts about the constitutionality of Jack Smith's appointment. So even Clarence Thomas brought up this whole issue just last week.
Do you find the timing of this coming down today unique? 2 days after assassination attempt at the start of the RNC?
Yeah, I got to believe Judge Cannon on Saturday night said, oh, my gosh, because I'm sure his opinion was ready on Friday, and they were just waiting to Monday to put it out. So I think it was just one big coincidence. But, I mean, the timing was amazing.
Yeah. Last question for you, Bob. Saturday night was a historical night, unfortunately. You're a political consultant. We haven't seen this ever where a candidate running for office who is a former president had an assassination attempt. You've run campaigns. How does Saturday night impact the trajectory of the Donald Trump campaign?
In a way, I think it may have had even a bigger effect on the trajectory of the Joe Biden campaign. Because I think, in a way, everything that happened Saturday night kind of ended what looked like to be a rebellion in the Democrat Party against Joe Biden. I think that's frozen. I think it's frozen. I think it was frozen even the previous week because of that NATO summit that we had. But I think what happened Saturday and then with the convention immediately afterwards this week, I think they're frozen again for another week. So, I mean,
Bob, I think you're right. I think you're right.
The whole talk about, these congressmen starting to come out, say, yeah, Joe Biden shouldn't run, that's ended. I mean, that whole talk, all that has ended. And I think Saturday night may have saved Joe Biden's political life.
Bob, thanks for taking the time to join me. I get hit top of the hour news. Sorry about that, but thank you. A great insight as always. I appreciate it very much. It's Bob Clegg, national political consultant. We got news coming up, and Sean in the newsroom has a story about the FBI investigation into the assassination attempt, but more on JD Vance. On the other side of this, got to hit news. On the other side of that, we'll continue the conversation about the 4 big stories that we're covering tonight, including the RNC, and Donald Trump's going to be talking there. We'll dip in on that in a few when he hits the stage. I'm Westside Jeff, sitting in for Chris Krok on News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3.